So the first things that I wanted to explore for this new world, I don't know why, but it revolves around the scenes that this pastor, that this father, that this clerical part of the church appears in. I think it was a really interesting part of the Castlevania series, and I think that what makes it so interesting for me is that he embodies kind of the false Catholic person or false spiritual person, in which they utilize some kind of well-known spiritual practice and they use it for their own purposes. It reminds me so much about the Pharisees when Jesus was alive. Everything he used a lot of metaphors to talk about corruption and how to deceive people, and he used the Pharisees for this. And I think people cloth as sheep, but that are actually wolves, enter in this category that the Pharisees were in, that I think this character falls into. Basically, we see him act for people, right? Being this priest, this actor of God, right? Everything that he does is in the name of God. But then we see him in his personal time, which we can only do because it's a series, right? We wouldn't be able to see a character like this in his personal time, in his when he's alone, and all the dialogues that he has explain that he has his ulterior motives and that he is using the God or the church or the faith of the people to further his agenda, right? So at one time he purges the town of witches, or a witch, which was the girlfriend of Dracula, and that brings a lot of chaos and evil into the world. But actually, the evil was already festering inside this person, right? This is the scene that I'm talking about, that he's actually burning this person alive. And the curious thing is that the woman says similar things to what Jesus says in the cross, which is forgive them because they don't know what they are doing. Um, the problem is that the person here, this pope, this clerical being, knows what he's doing. The thing that he doesn't know is that the ulterior motives that he has are trying to circumvent God, right? So he's trying to earn heaven without God in the middle, or without being deserving of it, right? Trying to do evil, but at the same time trying to fit into this image of the holy person, right? So we have that scene. Then here we have one of the dialogues that I found that says, "I will be the church." So basically, the church was never to glorify God or to be holy or to ascend, but it was to further his motives, right? And then we arrive to the scene that I like the most in the series, that it's when all hell breaks loose. These demons, these monsters that are commanded by Dracula, that they try to make that Dracula is kind of the devil in this world, but actually we see that the devil actually lives in everyone, and I like that Dracula is more humanized, although he is a corrupted being, right? So these demons, these impure beings, are wreaking havoc, eating people, and doing whatever outside, right? Evil things. And they go inside the church. And I don't remember if they were looking specifically for this pastor or the head of the church, or if they just came by it, right? And he was hiding inside the church. So they go for him, and he's kind of trembling, right? Which is strange for someone who should have all his faith in God, right? Being someone who has supposedly done miracles, or at least perceived them or saw them, or someone who delivers people from evil. Although we have a lot of examples of people being afraid in the Bible, and that doesn't mean anything. It's the nature of the human body to be afraid. This guy is super afraid, but he is banking on something, and that he is not only a god person, a godlike person, a holy person, but also that he is inside the church. So these demons that are coming to get him kindly remind him that his work means nothing. It has been done in his own name and not in the Father's names or Jesus' name or the Christ's name. That simply God doesn't isn't there in that church. Although you can find him everywhere, he chooses not to be there because he chooses not to meddle with evil, right? Where evil is done, you won't find him there. And it's funny, right? Because these demons that are supposedly pure evil, right? Since they know who they are, they don't deceive themselves. They know who they are, and they know who they are not also, and they know they are not holy, and that they are there to bring destruction. But this father is kind of confused about his identity, and I mean that he's confused and not that he's trying to be deceitful, because by definition, since he's a human creation, sorry, God creation, he's holy by definition, and the experience in Earth is the one that kind of makes us dirty in a sense. It's a whole plan, right? But this guy is identified with this evil, right? But he says he's good, but he's living kind of a double life, right? So basically, this guy can be touched by evil because he does evil. He holds evil in his heart, and basically the devil, the evil can touch him because he's not it's not that he's not from God, but he's not holding space to be filled with God. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to see in a series like that. The series was really interesting. Yeah, I was really hooked on it. But these scenes specifically of this character, that I think it's from season one, I found the most interesting about the series. I have played many games in my life, but the ones that I resonate the most are the ones that are included in the genre of dark fantasy. It's things like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and stuff like that. And we can sprinkle some parts from, for example, Hollow Knight or Silksong or stuff like that, where you see beyond what they are trying to show you. That is, for example, in this case, a game about little silly bugs, and then you see the beliefs of the world and how that world is constructed, right? The architecture, not of the buildings, but of the beliefs of that world, and how the creators of those worlds build those things, and then they build the world, the physical world, around those beliefs. So what I wanted to do with these first videos is kind of start structuring the beliefs that I want for this world and see what happens from there. I know that I want to include this concept that this church father has, which is this shame and guilt that it's hidden into self-glorification, and how in the end, when he's almost going to die, he kind of regresses and asks for mercy. But although God can give you mercy, at that moment he's not choosing God. He hasn't surrendered to God, but he is putting his authority on the evil, which is the one that he thinks has the control over the situation. I like how both in Silksong and Hollow Knight we kind of fight against the same concept, right? We have a being that is not omniscient, is not omnipotent, but although, because they have amassed so much power, they believe themselves to be the God, not a God, right? So they have this power trip, this ego, right? And they are as a God to God, uh, as we are a god to ants, for example. We have such capacities, such power, such size, such options that you might as well be a god to them, right? So I like this concept that in both games you have a god that is repressed, that is concentrated in some way into some being, or that is kind of restricted, right? Because it wasn't being good for the people there, it wasn't a good god, let's say. And then it comes what we would call Ahriman. You can look for it, but Ahriman is basically systems, is the oppression, is the machine, right? Some say that it's the beast. And Ahriman comes, I think in both cases, both Radiance and Mother Silk are both feminine, and I think it's a great parallelism that you have Ahriman coming to subjugate this feminine power, right? Because if you see, both are about creation, equality, and all that type, and then you have a system that comes that is very man-made, that is basically about merit, about ego, about power. The one with power should be up top and not down below serving, right? and I really like those topics. I think I would like to add some kind of this, but not necessarily with a figure in power that is feminine. I like that this happened also in Elden Ring, in which you have Marika basically crucified in the Elden Ring, in this ring of power, and Radagon, and of course, if you know the story, you know. For me, it's a blur, but I have this image of Marika. Here it is. You have this is Marika from Elden Ring. She was a goddess, or she is a goddess. I don't know. That she is kind of half man, half woman, but her female part, right, like a Ranma and a half, I think it's called, she's basically crucified, right? And it's this concept of these other characters too, that they have been crucified, contained by the world, but in this crucifixion they arrive to a much greater being, much greater power. Their power is unleashed in a sense. It's this idea that the men power, that this Ahrimanic, this masculine concept, this machine, can actually crucify the chaos and the creation that comes with feminine energy, and I like this. I like this a lot. Some say that in Japanese culture or Japanese media, they use a lot of um, Catholic motifs to represent stuff, but that they actually don't understand what they are doing. But I do believe that they know what they are doing. For example, I added here some images from Google that I remembered. For example, here we have Scaife's wand from Hack, the Dot Hack series, or you have some Evangelion here. Evangelion is filled with um, basically crucifixion stuff, crosses, but it's not like a perfect cross, like it's representing a kind of square stability, but it's representing a cross. And I understand that in ancient culture and in ancient motifs, signs, logos, and all that stuff, you had a lot of crosses and all that stuff. But we cannot lie in saying that if we think of a cross or the sign of a cross, we're thinking about the crucifixion of Jesus, right? He has been one of the most relevant person in history, or at least in the last 2000 years, right? You see that after 2000 years, his sacrifice and his story has been influencing us culturally. Although these messages, the messages that supposedly were from him, can be changed or can be misinterpreted or used for any other stuff, I see that there is a strong conviction about sacrifice, about doing what's right, about a new beginnings, about cleansing of the sin, and that's all over media, right? I know that there has been a lot of crucifixions or fictional crucifixions that hasn't represented this and that have basically misrepresented the sacrifice done by Jesus. But I think it's very interesting that this is present, not only still today, but that an archetype and a story like this can still be relevant in our media today. I like how the story repeats over and over again. I think it's a thematic in humanity that we like to explore because it's present in all our walks of life, in all our areas of our life. A character receives or is born with power, and if the character is not humble, is not properly stepping on earth, this character basically becomes a megalomaniac, starts thinking about the other beings as lesser, and that he actually has received this power to become akin a god, right? Um, the only god, from what we know, it's the god. We are not talking about lesser gods. We're talking about the god. It's the being that is out of this experience, the being that knows everything and has seen everything, because he's or it. Let's say he's out of time, so he can actually see everything that has happened, is happening, or will happen. Knows everything. It's omniscient because he knows everything about this reality. So he actually has power over this reality. But the concept here is that he is so humble and loves us so much that he, even though he could make us do whatever, he chooses to let us choose. Which is something that when you see a megalomaniac character or person, or a narcissist person, they don't want you to freely choose. They actually want you, they want you to venerate them, and if you don't validate this perception that they are a god, they will basically scorch you, right? Because you are a lesser being, which doesn't happen with the true god, right? So here we have a shot about of Homelander from The Boys, mimicking in their promotional pictures a pose that is similar to a crucifixion, but it's actually like a receiving people like Jesus. I'm sure it's not only receiving, but it almost resembled an invitation of a hug, right? But in Homelander, in The Boys, we know that Homelander has killed thousands of persons and is very narcissistic, megalomaniac, and he has a lot of issues, right? But I like this concept of a character receiving power and how it shows the roots of the character and what truly is there, know what they have learned to show so people perceive them differently. Talking about Homelander, remind me of Madara. Um, Something to mention is that if the character didn't have some redeeming qualities or some humanity, they would be insufferable, and sometimes even we wouldn't even want to watch them or sometimes even root for them. I remember that there were some times in which I said, okay, Homelander, yeah, I understand your position, or Madara, the same. And those, I think, are the great qualities about writing Billion, or the evil counterpart in these worlds, that it has to have relatability that makes you question if you are actually evil, because you are relating to the experience of someone that is doing evil, and it's the counterpart, the evil character on the shows or the media that we are consuming. And I really like that whenever these characters amass power, receive power, train for power, or whatever, they use it to basically destroy the status quo, which generally is very collaborative, right? They want to basically delete the option for the person to think. I think that's why I thought about Madara, in which he wanted to use the Tsukushomi, right? It was like a kind of jutsu in which he basically plugged all the people into a tree that sucks the mana out of them, and they live in a perpetual dream, and they will receive whatever they prefer, and it's basically a fake life, right? All these characters, the thing that they have in general is that they prefer people, or they prefer people to live in a made up life instead of confronting the suffering of real life, that it actually transforms us into better people, right? Seeing the suffering that we cause, seeing the suffering that we cause through, that we go through, that's the actual not philosopher's stone, but the actual alchemy. Through suffering, we realize what we are not and what we truly are. The suffering kind of releases us, because it shows us that that's not the way. So I think this is a very good comparison between these two characters. Madara actually wants for people not to suffer, but he kills a lot of people, so it doesn't make sense. In their sense of view, the sacrifices that he's making are worth it, and in Homelander's case, he just wants to be validated, which is something that he didn't receive, and that plus superpowers creates a bad god. I wanted to also mention the topics that I want to touch on is, for example, let's see this parallelism. Imagine that a god or an entity or a superpowered being comes to a place, a society establishes around it, or there's already a society, but this god imposes itself, either for good or for bad, and things are good for a while, right? But then suddenly something starts going wrong. For example, in the case of the mother Silk, um, she wants to be she wants to be the people to be devoted to her, right? And some people don't, so she starts killing people. So what they do is they put her to sleep, and there is a whole structure, a whole mythical clerical structure starts revolving around it, and a church emerges around it, kind of putting this being into the center of our cosmology. And then the system that started with a good cause then starts deteriorating. People change or start dying, and new people come, and the original concept that was there, now people are have a kind of distorted point of view. It happens in religion, it happens in politics, and I think it's a very common topic, that whenever a system outlives its purpose, let's say, or keeps the purpose alive, for example survival or stuff like that, just for the sake of keeping power, I think that there is a good story to tell, or there is a good vehicle for a story. So that's something that I will want to incorporate for sure. So what's my idea with all this? I really wanted to explore some ideas that I had, some archetypes that I have in my head that keep popping up, and I want to write a story in which, or write a story, or at least explore the scenery or the characters that we could find. Um, I want to explore a story of a city that has a church. So there's these Christian values, not Catholic, Christian values, and how they are changed. They are distorted, right? Similar to what I explained in Castlevania before. But I want to explore it from a visual perspective. I don't want it to be like a novel or something that you need to read, but I want you to feel it whenever you see it, right? I like that about very much about Dark Souls and all the Souls-like games that From Software has released, in which they mostly don't tell. It's not they don't expose everything, but you have to read everything, see the armor. Like the story is there, but you have to find it. You have to look for it. You have to almost study it, right? I really enjoy the videos that explore, I don't know, the armor of the different factions for 4 hours. Those are really interesting to me. So I think this is a good place to leave the first video. My idea is this one. I want to explore this idea, how it would look like, how the characters would look. I have a lot of references that I want to explore and see where it takes us. So hopefully you like it and you stay for the rest.